long before this was a park, I'd come over here and hike around. You know, in fact, several people still lived here in farms, on farms. Now, by the time the park, I always thought that they had abandoned the park mostly. 90% of the folks that lived out here, and the park just got this land. The state had gotten the land that had been abandoned, more or less, because they come here and picnic things like that. But then I found articles where the very first land sold here for the park was in 1963. I probably said that tonight. So people have been buying and selling, or been getting bought and sold out for a long time. So I don't know how many of those farmers stayed as long as they were allowed to, or the best deal they could get from the state. But anyway, I came out of here probably in '65, which would have made me 10 or 11 or 12, in that age group, according to which year we came. My uncle Jim McGrady had brought us out here. Me and the Phillips boys and Joe Dixon, all these guys grew up in Pierpoint. So we hiked up top of Bear Walla, down into Steel Run, up what we called Cold Bank Hollow, which pops out just right out there, really. And it comes up by the old museum, you know, or the Siebert House, second Siebert House. And we hiked up here, and we spent the day hiking around. We hiked up to where the lodge is now. There was no lodge there, of course. Park, I didn't know the park was coming at that time. But it's a field, it's grown up, there's not much there. There is an old base for a house up there. And we're sitting on about where the lodge is now. Almost exactly where it is. We're sitting there in the grass pretty high, and we're eating a snack or two. And we all hear something. I look back, and the grass seems to be moving. It's tall, like a field had grown up. Nobody trimmed it. So the grass kind of moved. It didn't slow down. Anyway, can't count him.
Can't count him.
Yep, can't count him. He didn't slow. So and Jim McGrady is like a college guy. You know, him and Terry Houck were college together, different college, Concord and Bluefield State, but they're from Pierpoint. So, and Terry may have been with us, I can't remember, but Jim was for sure. And we're sitting up there, eating our sandwiches, talking about the families that used to live here. We hear something coming up behind us. We all turn and look. Don't see anything. We turn about the third time, and the grass kind of moves, like there's something in the grass. Think of tall grass and there's a tiger walking up, but it's lower than the top of it. The grass moves. Something's moving that grass. And I said, man, something's coming toward us. And we all turn and look. And Jim says, well, I know what it might be. I've heard stories. I thought, well, he's trying to scare us. I said, okay, what? What is it? Just keep watching. We'll see. Well, this grass keeps moving. Now, where we came in, we'd got some grass knocked down. But this is off on a tangent. Grass comes almost right up to us. Probably that tall, you know, weeds and grass. And it's kind of moving. Something is walking right up toward us. And as it steps out, as the grass parts, just for a moment, it looks like there's a woman standing. And then I don't see her, and I thought, well, that was my imagination. Even at that age, I thought, And all I said, anybody see that? Well, we're all saying, well, I thought it did, but then no, we must have just imagined it. Maybe the sunlight hit or whatever. But it was spooky as could be. And Jim said, I'll tell you a story. And here's that story, which I also looked up as clerk of the court. This happened. Records are vague, but clear enough that this probably took place. There was a lady around the turn of the century, not this century, but the 20th. They had a house there, and they had a man who was pretty hard working, but you know, obviously the woman's doing most of what keeps that family together. It's still true in this world. But she's got like 5 or 6 kids. Some are like 13 or 14. One's like 2 or 3. And one hadn't arrived yet. And Jim's telling the story, and we're like, okay. And it said she loves her husband, he loves her, they love all the kids, and they all work together to make sure they can make ends meet. And he said, you know the road that goes out to Station Gap? And that's a little trail that goes all the way around. Up by, there's a cemetery on the hill, looking down over toward, what is her name? She owns a big farm on the other side, the Salisville side.
Phillips.
Yeah, the Phillips farm. Comes up there and comes down by where the superintendent lives almost, and then goes out to the lot, you know. And it's now called the fire trail. But because the park maintained that so they keep fire from getting into the park. But it wasn't then, because, you know, there was no park. But anyway, that road went out and hit Station Gap and went down. You go to Maven that way. this lady kept telling, she loved kids and she loved her kids more than most. And she loved her husband, but you know, he's a guy. He's not, you know, God, what's going to happen if I die? Who's going to raise these kids? Who's going to, you know, will he? You know, I'm so frightened. So she was training the oldest son and especially the oldest daughter. That's just the way that usually works out. Even now, it works out that way most of the time. To make sure they could help her, because she was having troubles. For the first time, she was having troubles while she was pregnant. And they said she just kept begging him, honey, you've got to get serious about this. What if something happens to me? And then she gives birth right there at the house, which is the way most people were born there. She didn't go to a hospital. There was no hospital. That was predates the hospitals in the county. And she's sick. She's weak. And of course they tend to the baby. And they had a lady come and help them out, a midwife kind of a lady from another farm. And it went on, and she never gets strong enough to get out of the bed. She's conscious. She talks to him. She's telling her husband, you've got to, honey, you've got to take care of these kids, especially the baby. You've got to do it. Please, you know, get your act together. You know, and if a year from now, if I really die, you're not going to die. If I die, you get married again. Find you a woman who will help you raise the kids, please. Well, and then one day, you know, she said, look, I've got to go and see a doctor. I've got to go. I've got to. I can't get out of bed, but I've got to go. So get the boys, all of you. You got to take me out to the top where Station Gap is now. We got to get in there. We got to hit the Slab Fork Creek and find a doctor. I think I'm dying. So they pick up the bed and they're carrying the bed with her in it. Maybe a quarter of a mile out that trail. They're only halfway up what would be the golf course now, but above it on the mountain. And she dies. You know, and there she is dead. And they end up carrying that bed back to the house. Eventually, of course, she's buried. She's buried on this park, but I'm not getting into where. You got to be careful if there's still family around anyway, because they'll say, "What are you telling stories about my?" Come on, man. And she's buried. Almost immediately, people who would come and help that guy. He ended up getting married, by the way, again, maybe a year and a half later, to apparently a good woman who helped him raise the kids and straighten him out, made him work harder even, whatever she made him do. The story said that she was as good as the other woman, but she had only had 1 or 2 kids herself, so she was healthier. And okay, that's the end of that tragic, the physical part of the story. But the people who were around him throughout the rest of his life would talk about, yeah, that was almost spooky. What was that? I guess it was the leaves drifting down. You know, you see me by following her. She would often appear to them and say, you know, and check on the kids. Check on the kids. And if you hiked up there, Jim said, people talk about coming up here. Floyd Houck talks about that. You remember Floyd Houck at all?
Yeah.
Floyd died when he was 99, almost 100. And He's been gone a while, but he would tell that story. Yeah, Bud, she'd just come around and check on you and check. If he's up there with kids, she'd especially check on you. She just make sure you're taking care of the kids. And of course, eventually that farmhouse isn't even there anymore. It's not yet the park, but it's gone. Those kids are now probably grandparents at this point in time when I'm telling the story from. But people still see that woman. And she's dressed in white bedclothes, like she had on when they tried to carry her out in her bed. And she just comes out and watches kids. If you go up there near the lodge with kids, she wants to make sure they're okay. Well, eventually a lodge is built there, close to where her house was. Maybe 100 yards. It's up toward the superintendent's house and kind of if you're facing that to the right, out that trail a little bit, not far. And now she works mainly the lodge, especially if you have kids with you. And she doesn't hurt anyone. People see her in the restaurant. People mainly see her in the old part of the lodge, but even in the new now. Especially if you're there with kids. Some people say you kind of feel some presence And if it's dark in the room, it suddenly gets just a little bit lighter. And this lady will step right through your door or right through your wall. And she just looks and smiles at the children. And of course it scares you to death, right? Because you don't know what is it, who is this? How'd they get in here, you know, kind of thing. You don't really think they just walk through that wall. People see her walk down the hall. I've actually been up there, several of us, attempting to see her and hear somebody. You hear them out in the hall, and somebody in the room will let out a, what are you doing here? You know, and then they'll say, honey, go get the clerk or something. And we'll step out in the hallway. And every now and then, you'll see someone start to come through a wall, but then you don't. Kind of like what we almost saw way back when I was a little kid. I think I just saw a woman in some kind of a white nightgown, but I'm not sure. None of us were. But some people see her for real. I mean, forever. I mean, she looks almost solid, except she can still do that. She still comes to visit rooms in the lodge where children are staying, especially on the second floor. That is a true story. People have told that.
On the floor.
But she is a loving kind of a ghost, if that's what she is. I don't know. Anyway, folks, let's please, we've still got enough light, you won't burn yourself up. Let's please roast some more stuff here. You know you want some more, don't you?
No. You told me to tell you no.
They don't care. They'll say, yeah, go ahead. Snacks are good. Especially chocolate, marshmallows, and graham crackers.
Yes.
See? Go ahead. See?
Can I?
You know you want some. Adults, you can eat some too. Come on.
Please.